Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on the Talk HR UK podcast channel. My name is Damien Barnett, one of the managers of the Alexander Lloyd business. Alexander Lloyd itself has been operating across the Southeast for the last 20 years, specializing within human resources, finance accountancy, and financial services recruitment. Today, we're looking to discuss the really topical conversation of LinkedIn and how to maximize your opportunities on this particular platform. My guest is somebody I know incredibly well. I've spent 3.5 years working with him in a former life, and it's really exciting that we're able to collaborate on this, I guess, very topical conversation given light and the engagement on LinkedIn. So my guest is John Carey. John Carey is the founder of Sportex Consulting. Sportex Consulting are a recruitment organization that operates across predominantly three markets: the US, UK, and the Middle East. John, thank you very much for joining us today. Do you mind just giving, I guess, our listeners a little bit of insight into what your world looks like these days?
Yeah, no, look, thanks for having me on the podcast to start with. It's always good to chat with like-minded people in the industry, but I guess even better when they're ex-colleagues. So look, thanks for the invite, and yeah, I mean, exciting times for us. We started SportsX at possibly the worst time imaginable. 4 weeks before a global pandemic, but I guess in life things are sent to try you a little bit, and as I say, look, the purpose of SportsX is twofold. The first part of the organisation is, more along the lines of a traditional recruitment firm, where we focus on head office recruitment into sports and its related industries. And then the second arm of the business is the consultancy arm, and that's focused around technology, finance, and I guess from a marketing and a fan experience perspective, tie in the whole sort of piece together. So we've got a team of consultants now that we're offering out to the market to advise on sporting organisations, and as I say, anybody that's related to that industry.
Awesome. Sounds like you've got a lot on your plate at the moment moving forward.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and then you've got two challenges of being stuck in the UAE. That's where my family home is, so I've been unable to travel and to meet with our clients in the UK and the US. And thank God for the likes of Zoom being able to help us facilitate these interactions. And the second thing is, I guess, working from home. I'm one of these people that had always enjoyed working from home on a one-off basis. When you and I worked at Morgan McKinley, that was always one of the perks of the job. But trying to do it sort of 6 days a week with a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old has been challenging at the best of times. So, but look, not moaning. It's been an experience, and we're really excited for the future ahead at SportsX.
Yeah, no, definitely, I can imagine. So look, obviously we wanted to try and collaborate and bring and share ideas and maybe even debate a little bit. I'm quite up for the discussion, but we wanted to talk about LinkedIn. I think you said something really poignant the other day to me. It was about just adding value in every touch point that you have with all of your candidates, your clients, your contacts. And the LinkedIn sort of piece is, I think, really, really important. So where, from your perspective, where do you think the value is from LinkedIn? What are you sort of having discussions with your market?
I think you're right. Look, one of the things that we've been very acceptant of as an organisation, and this is from, and you and I have been in the industry for a long time, but, we'll never be in a position where we are able to place every candidate that we have a conversation with. It's just not feasible. But I wanted to build a business model where, SportsX is known for adding value regardless of what the end outcome is. And for me, LinkedIn is one of the most powerful tools that, people searching for jobs can use, and it's probably very misunderstood. People that I'm interacting with are probably using 10 or 20% of its functionality. And therefore, a lot of the conversations I'm ending up having with candidates is around their LinkedIn profile, how they're positioning themselves, how they're using their tool to maximize their exposure to the job market. And I guess what's astounded me, the more conversations I have with people, it's not just people at the entry level who are, coming into the first stages of their careers. There's a lot of very senior people who have a very limited understanding of how the platform works. And
I think it's terrifying when you really think about it. As I've spoken to more and more of the market, there's still some individuals that aren't on LinkedIn. And you're kind of going, well, you're only servicing 50% of your of job opportunities and what's available to you. And I think that is sort of re-educating the market that actually things have moved slightly beyond CVs in some ways. The other part is if you look at outsourcing placements and programs, they're so insistent on talking about your sort of interview styles, and I get that, supporting that individual into their next job opportunity. And they spend so much time with CVs and CV writing. I think for the most part, I mean, the reality is nobody is talking about LinkedIn. And one thing that I've taken away over the last 3 or 4 months over Corona and COVID-19 is LinkedIn's engagement has amplified dramatically over this period. And clearly there's more people with time on the hand, job seekers, and actually just people working from home means they probably browse a little bit more. But yeah, I still think it's a slight worry, just perhaps how behind the times and the lack of knowledge that's available. So hopefully that's what we can try and share today.
Yeah, I think, I think you're spot on. And I think that there has been a real focus on CVs for such a long period of time. I mean, my personal opinion is that an individual CV has almost become secondary. And I have clients who openly now say to me, when I say to them, look, I will submit the shortlist for you, we'll get the 4 or 5 CVs over to you. They're almost saying, look, don't bother sending me the CV, just give me the 5 names and tell me who they are, and I'll look them up on LinkedIn to get a sense of who they are and what they're all about. So yeah, I believe that the CV is becoming secondary, and that will only continue to be more of the case as time and technology progresses.
Okay, so here's a good example of why LinkedIn's going to be important moving forward with the job search. What exactly does a good LinkedIn profile work? And I'm hoping this is where we have a debate and, we have slightly different agendas or viewpoints. But to you, in your opinion?
Well, I almost see LinkedIn as a way of you being able to communicate your story to potential hiring managers. If that's what you're using LinkedIn for. If let's talk about it just in that context. And I know there are other ways that people are using LinkedIn as a networking site, but let's look at it from a job seeking perspective. I think it is a more sophisticated way of telling your story to a potential employer about who you are, and not just who you are from a skill set point of view, but who you are from as an individual, how culturally you might be aligned to their organization. And there are certain elements of your profile that you can utilize to convey that message or not convey that message. And, actually sometimes by not having, relevant parts of your profile completed, even if you're the right candidate, it can almost have a detrimental effect on your application. And I'll give you an example. It's like, if I have somebody apply for a job by easy apply on LinkedIn and they don't have a profile picture, it's very, for me, it provides a level of uncertainty. And it's not because I want to know who that individual is, from a looks point of view. We're not judging people on, who they are and what they look like. But the fact that it's a technology platform, you do wonder, actually, is this a genuine profile? Why hasn't this individual put a picture up? Why haven't they taken the time and care to try and portray a story of themselves? So yeah, I think the profile itself can be a very, very powerful tool, but it also can have a detrimental effect on your application if you only do half of it. In the same way that if you only put down your job titles and didn't put down the dates of employment on your CV, somebody would say, well, that's just sloppy and lazy, and you would probably disregard the CV. And the LinkedIn profile for me is exactly the same. So it's one of these things, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it right and utilize it to its maximum power.
I'm glad that you actually brought up the picture, because I was having a discussion with somebody else recently on LinkedIn about the picture, and she was at a crossroads. She wasn't sure whether she should have a picture or not. And I gave my sort of opinion on the matter, and then I kind of put a disclaimer at the end, and I said, sorry, the question was actually, should we have pictures on CVs? And it wasn't necessarily around LinkedIn. And I recommended at the time, probably not, because that's just best practice. And then I kind of questioned myself, well, why is that the case? Because you just used an example about LinkedIn, and I do think LinkedIn needs a profile picture. You need to understand who you're working with, who you're networking, and talking to, building that profile. It just makes it more personable. But yeah, it's funny how we're saying one hand CVs is a no-go, and on the other hand, LinkedIn's it's okay. In fact, it's detrimental if you don't have it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess that's just the advances in technology and society, and what is expected. I guess in a very digitally led social media acceptance society, that visual has almost become part of the story of who individuals are, and I just think that's the route it's going down. And the other thing is, I guess, with I don't want to go down the whole cyber security route, but and there is a lot of risk around cybersecurity. People do worry around documents that they open, profiles they engage with, who they disclose information to. So I guess the more personable and real and relatable you can make your profile, the greater chance you've got of someone believing it's genuine and engaging with you. You don't want to give people a reason to go, I'm uncertain whether that's a robot running that profile or whether that's a human. Therefore, I'm just going to discard it and move on to the next application.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so I mean, I always work on a 5-point strategy when it comes to LinkedIn. Anybody that I'm talking to, I say, think about your brand, your personal brand on LinkedIn. What are you trying to portray? What do you think the right things within brand, and you mentioned image there for a second. What are the other areas around brand persona before they start building up their LinkedIn, I guess, network as such?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk through the first kind of 3 points that are always on my list when I'm talking to candidates, which is, funnily enough, it's around brand. So it's good that we start at the same place. I talk around profile picture and what I'm looking for, I guess, as a recruiter. And I spend a lot of time talking to my hiring managers and really getting a sense of what ticks boxes for them or doesn't. For me, the profile picture should be your face and your shoulders, and by that it means it should be visible. It should look like a headshot. It should be in color. Ideally, you should be smiling. If you're not a smiley person, then maybe don't. But it's like, for me, it should be smiling. It should show some level of your personality, your charisma. It should have a warmth to it, I think. In the same way, and I always liken it to an individual, right? First impressions count. And everybody says that when you go to an interview. Well, think about the moment they look at your LinkedIn profile as being the first moment that they're getting introduced to you. So this is like the virtual handshake. So your image should almost portray you when you're shaking that individual's hand in person, or maybe not shaking hands now in COVID, elbow bump or whatever it's going to be. The second thing around imagery is you have this ability in the background to select an image. And I always talk to people about the background images being their opportunity to convey a little bit about their personality. And that can be anything. And if I would go back to sports and relate it to sports, it can be as simple as, a picture of yourself outside the football stadium of the team that you support. I was dealing with an individual the other day. He'd been working for Nike for a while. He had no real background photo on his LinkedIn page. And we started talking about, what was his personality? What had he done? What had he done within Nike? What imagery could he use? And out of nowhere, he said, oh, I was one of the models for the release of Chelsea's third kit 2 years ago. And when I was like, oh, use that as an image. So there's a great image of him now in the stadium, sat in Chelsea's, third shirt, modeling it. He's a Chelsea fan himself. So it's kind of like a dream come true. But I was like, great, that really conveys who you are, what you're passionate about. So the use of imagery, I think, can be really powerful. But then there's something else on the kind of, the header screen of anyone's LinkedIn profile, which, so many people get wrong or make overly complex. And that's your headline. Now, I guess the first iteration of LinkedIn was that your headline is your job title. But for me, that's a duplication of what your actual job title is under your career history. And I always say to people, try and let your headline tell the story of who you are in that moment. What is your purpose of being on the platform? So if you look at my LinkedIn profile, my LinkedIn profile and my purpose of the reason I use the platform is because I'm in the business of connecting talented people in the sports industry. So that's my header on LinkedIn, and it tells everybody that, takes that first snapshot of my profile, exactly why I'm here and how I can add value. And I just try and sort of implore on candidates to do the same thing, and not to be fearful, and, you know, to be bold, especially if you're not in employment, to say, you know, experienced finance professional looking for a job in the sporting industry. You know, that should be your headline. And my general rule of thumb with these things is, you know, don't make people think. Be very explanatory. Be very kind of to the point with it. You know, it doesn't need to be all cryptic. And I see this, you know, so much of growth, marketing, data, / and it's just a load of words. And what we're meant to try and, you know, work through those words and work out what you're trying to tell us. No, you need to be, you know, really kind of clear and concise with your wording. So for me, brand, they're the three things that I think are kind of the first impactful moments.
Yeah.
And then the final part of the brand piece that I talk to individuals about is kind of, you get this chance to write a summary. And so many people write it in third party. It's very formal. It's almost a summary of their career whilst trying to sound as professional as they can. Whereas I honestly believe the summary should be in your, you know, in first person context. It should be the story about who you are. You know, no more than maybe 200 or 300 words, but it should just be a snapshot of who you are, what you do, maybe, you know, what your interests are, what you're looking to achieve, you know, just what is your story, again, within the moment. And there's nothing wrong with keep updating it, but make the summary a story rather than just what people would have seen as the cover letter on your CV in the past. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, definitely. To take it a couple of steps back, when you mentioned the headline, I think what we'll do is we'll talk about something that happens at the end of the process on LinkedIn. But the importance of having that headline right, like you described and said, is that when you start interacting with other posts and they start seeing your name and they see your sub headline, they understand very quickly, that person is in HR, or that person is a learning development specialist. Because I'm seeing at the moment open to opportunities available immediately, looking at contract and permanent. But that could be across any facet, any industry, any role or vacancy, and it just doesn't tell a story. And you're almost forcing, if I was in that situation, I'm then relying on people clicking on my profile to understand what my background is and am I suitable. And really, I don't know if people would click on everybody's profile just by seeing they're available immediately, because unfortunately there's just so many people. So I think that's the importance of the headline and getting it correct from the off. I like the banner. I think that's really important. There's some really novel ideas. I've seen some marketing people put together sort of their own little caption of their banner using their marketing skills, but showcasing a bit of their personality and of course showcasing what they can do from a marketing point of view. So that was blue sky thinking, they say. And then I've seen those that have done sort of charity events and it's them crossing a marathon or half marathon, whatever it may be. And I think it shows a bit about them. Whatever you do, don't leave a blank. So I'd agree wholeheartedly on that. So look, I like the brand. I think we're on the same page for sure. I was hoping for the debate at that point, but not there yet. Okay, so
let me give you one to debate, because this is, you know, asked a lot to me, and I have a very strong opinion on it. Do you, and we won't do this for sports because that's very industry specific. If you are a HR professional looking for a job across industry, should your profile picture be in casual, business casual, or business smart?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it should be casual. Or I think it would suffice if it was casual. I'm picturing my market, and I think for most business leaders across HR, a casual formal wear is fine. I've previously recruited in finance, and maybe finance have a different viewpoint of that, you know. They have a different perspective on things. And if you look at a big four firm, accountancy firm, they might not agree with what I'm saying or suggesting, but I'm intrigued. I mean, sporting must be quite relaxed, isn't it? The sporting community?
Yeah, and this is where we kind of, you know, we have the debate, because I look at so many individuals' LinkedIn profiles, and, you know, you talk about finance and they're a finance director and they are sat or photographed in their suit with a tie done up, and they jump on a Zoom call with me and they're in their, you know, their Adidas polo shirt. And I say to them, is that normal, you know, workwear? And they say, oh yeah, we never wear suits. I'm like, well, why have you got a suit on in your profile picture? You know, and would you wear a suit to an interview? And then that's where the debate, and probably that's another topic for another podcast. But you know, I do think there is a change in expectancy from, you know, in the interview process in this day and age. There's a change in culture. I do think, you know, again, I'm going to plug, you know, working with agencies, but one of the things that we've done a blog about previously is obviously being interview ready for a role in the sports industry. And what we're able to do with the candidates that interview via us is give them a really kind of detailed interview prep. And the things that are included in the interview prep, as long as, you know, as well as obviously the fundamentals around the role and who they're going to be meeting with and what the expectations are from the process, is actually what is the culture of the organisation and how should you position yourself from a dress point of view to make sure you're aligning yourself, because I guess there is a degree of mirroring in that. But I would also say that there isn't a right or wrong, and that's why this thing can be, you know, debated about what you wear. I would just talk to the individuals and say to them, it should be a representation of who you are. So if you are comfortable in a suit and that is how you would position yourself in the working environment, then that's how you should be. If you are like me, who I think I now own one suit, and I probably couldn't tell you where the jacket is, it's probably in the back of my car because I haven't worn it for so long. It's like, I would never portray myself in a suit, because any interaction anybody has with me, I'm always in a sports polo shirt, because that's just how I work and who I am. So there probably can be a little bit of individuality to the profile photograph, but I certainly don't think there is any necessary, necessity to be suited and booted anymore. The industries, you know, or you know, globally, businesses don't expect it, I don't think.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the one thing that I can say you definitely don't want to do is have photos where, for argument's sake, you've taken a selfie and you're sitting in your car and you can see the seatbelt strapped across you, or you've gone on holiday and you've got your glasses on and the photo's about 30 meters away. Like they're just poor photos, unfortunately, for LinkedIn. They might be great holiday snaps or whilst you're going out, and you can still see sometimes the ones that have taken a photo on a night out and they've cropped the friend out, the mate out, and you avoid those. You know, sound sensible. Even if it's a nice sunny day outside, just go and get a quick headshot whilst you're in the garden. It can be casual. It doesn't need to be serious, and you don't need to be somebody that's worried about a model shoot or overly photogenic. Just take something that's sensible, but like you say, that's an extension of you and your personality.
Yeah, and you're right. Look, the one thing people have to remember is it's a professional networking site. It isn't Facebook, it isn't Instagram, and therefore, again, it's a little bit like doing it properly. You know, there takes a minimal level of effort to go outside on a sunny day, although probably slightly more difficult in the UK, based on what you were telling me before the start of this call. But you know, but it doesn't take a lot of effort to step outside and to get someone in your household to take a nice headshot of you and to upload that. It's not acceptable, in my opinion, for the glass of vino to be half covering your face, you know, with the pub in the background. You know, that is going to have the wrong impression for a hiring manager, definitely.
Definitely. Just on that brand piece as well, I think the importance is when you complete your profile, we spoke about current companies, the summary, the job responsibilities within each position. Don't feel obligated to put every employee for the last 20 years. You know, I think 10 years is fine if you've got some really good content, especially for the interim consultants and so on. I think they might have more companies, more profiles, so it's slightly harder to capture. But when you get to the bottom of your profile, the one that I think everybody forgets about and undervalues is recommendations.
Yeah.
We don't, as recruiters, we don't get references anymore. I mean, we do from a legal standpoint where you get your dates confirmed, and that's all you get told these days. Mm. And I think that recommendation piece is the bit that can really sell past employees, colleagues, projects, deliverables that you've done, and somebody just commenting. Now, that means you might have to go out there and badger somebody and sort of politely ask, could you please write me that recommendation? I'm sure I could do one back. But building a consistency and a pipeline of positive recommendations is only a good thing. And there has been times when we send CVs and LinkedIn profiles to job vacancies, employers, and we said, have a look at their recommendation. That was written by their CEO. That was written by their HRD. And can be a really powerful statement, because unfortunately the bureaucracy of references clouds it.
Yeah, and you're so spot on. I'm really pro people asking their network for recommendations. I personally have done it myself, and you can look at it from standpoint. If you're looking for a job, it's great because, as you say, they act as references, and often as more of that 360-degree references, because it could be someone that's worked with you, someone that you've worked for, someone in the wider organization that you've had an impact on. So I think it's all great. And yes, it is daunting for people to reach out to their network and say, could you say something nice about me? Because, we know that that's awkward. It's like asking for a compliment. But look, I mean, everybody is in this together. We all know how tough the environment is right now. And I generally think 99% of people out there will want their ex-colleagues to find work and will want their ex-colleagues to get their dream job. And they'll do anything they possibly can. And if it takes 5 minutes out of their time, they'll be more than happy to do so. And the other thing is, I mean, one of the things I did when I moved from Morgan McKinley to Mackenzie Jones was I knew that part of my remit at Mackenzie Jones was building out the organization and doing, a lot of hiring of talent. So I reached out to all of the people that I worked with at Morgan McKinley to do recommendations on my profile, so that anybody that was considering taking a job working for me in the future had a real sense of what I was like as a manager, director, and what it'd be like to work for me. So it doesn't just have to be job seekers that should be thinking about recommendations. I think everybody should think about it, even when you do take a role, because again, as you say, it's building your brand, and it will impact people's decisions of how they work with you, or do they work for you, and so on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so I think we've kind of just about covered brand. What's next on the agenda from your point of view? What would you say is
well, I'm not sure whether this fits into brand or profile, but I think it's something that's relevant from a job seeker's point of view, is that you make sure that you're filling out your relevant skills on LinkedIn, because for those who don't know how the system works, the system works on an algorithm basis. It works for recruiters, often via Boolean searching. And what they will do is maybe they will target job titles, maybe they will target previous companies that individuals have worked for, but what they'll certainly target are key skills. So if you don't have any of those key skills filled in, you're not going to appear in any searches. Whereas if you do have the key skills, you've got a good chance of ranking high up the algorithm. And the higher that you rank within the algorithm, the more likely you are to come up at the top of the search. And the more likely you are to be at the top of the search, the more likely your profile is to get viewed and you get invited in for an interview. So we always talk to people about, within their profile, don't, as you said earlier, don't just think about some of the recent job history that you've had, but also think about filling in the key searches.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I've recently had an HR position that required quite a bit of mergers and acquisitions. You'd be surprised how many people don't include that. And then, of course, it's how do you portray that terminology? A lot of other individuals might call it M&A. I mean, okay, I'm going to be controversial here. Does that just reconfirm that recruiters search for profiles based on keywords, and that's all they do is facilitate the magic words as such?
I mean, what 80% of recruiters do? Do you think? Let's be frank. Our industry is a fascinating industry, because there are some incredibly talented recruiters, incredibly proactive recruiters who go to the ends of the earth to find their client top talent. And then there are a lot of recruiters who look for the path of least resistance, and are the ones that are probably driving the value of our industry down, because the quality of the shortlist that they provide to their clients are based on doing some keyword matching and finding 5 suitable but not best in class profiles. So look, it does happen. It doesn't mean that means only average candidates come to the top of the searches though. But what it does mean is, if you're an exceptional candidate, you've got a greater chance of getting missed out if you don't fill these relevant skills in, over an average candidate who may only match. And when I say average candidate, I don't mean these individuals are average by nature. I mean that they may only match 50% of the job brief. But if their relevant skills are showing up above yours because you haven't taken the time to fill it in, well, yeah, a recruiter may just go, well, I've now got my 5. I don't need to search another 250 profiles to find the individual that hasn't bothered to fill it in. So, who's lazy there? Is it the recruiter for not going deeper, or is it the candidate for not going deeper into their own profile? Well, I always tell the candidates, put the onus on the recruiter, because don't give them the get out of jail card of being able to go, well, I did my search, nobody else appeared. That's on you. If you don't appear in the search, that's on you. If the recruiter then doesn't choose to go through the applications, well, that's on him, and that's for his client and he to have a conversation about the quality of work that he's producing.
Yeah. And I think it's about elevating the status of the application, or elevating the status of the profile. If you, as a recruiter, and I guess, unfortunately enough, I've worked the same market for the last 10 years. So I've got an understanding of what businesses had different life cycles, and generally industry business life cycle is the most common parameter outlined by hiring managers. We want somebody that's had high growth. We want somebody who's gone through transformation, cultural change, whatever it may be. So it's using my knowledge, but I guess not everybody's worked in the market for 10 years plus, or not everybody has got that know-how about X, Y, and Z business. And you're covering what, 3 geographical patches: Middle East, US, UK?
Yeah, I mean, predominantly UK and US, although we split the US into 2 patches, East and West, just because of how geographically vast it is. But yeah, we also do have clients here in the Middle East as well. So yeah, there's lots of nuances to the recruitment we do. And the other thing is that there's a lot of, cross-pollination of talent, because our clients are demanding the best, the most progressive, the most advanced individuals to join their organizations. And, they're not looking at geography, they're expecting to hire top talent and the talent to move to become part of their organization. So, we can't afford just to do a loose search based on a geography and hope we come up with the right candidates. We have to deep dive into everything that we do. And yeah, I mean, it means probably as an agency, we use LinkedIn less from just a search perspective, because we do a lot of market mapping for our clients, in terms of they will identify organizations that they want us to go after. But from a generic job user point of view, as you say, you've got to do whatever you can to amplify your profile and get yourself to as high a position in the algorithm as you can do.
Cool. So where next then for job seekers on LinkedIn?
Well, I think a big one on your agenda that you always have spoken to me about for as long as I've known you is growing your network. So I know you've got a big opinion on how to grow the network and what people should be doing. So should we push into network?
Yeah, definitely. I think the network piece is really important. So, okay, here you are. You've built out your brand. It's starting to look pretty good. So you're ready to now start connecting with people. And I jump on people's profiles where they've got 500 connections, 1,000 connections, and they'll probably think that's quite high. The reality is it's not. And I think the importance of having a higher connection pool, talent pool, is only the second and third degree connections that you'll then be able to have access to. And that's where you'll probably get most of your success. Okay, so then who are you connecting to? Do you want to just connect to everybody? I've seen a lot of individuals. There's LinkedIn Open Networks, which is essentially profiles that will connect with anybody and everybody. They will never decline it. And I don't think you want to go to that point. You need to have your network that's relevant to your industry. So from a job seeker's perspective, I would say definitely connect with recruiters. Try not to be too guarded or protected over that, because they could share a huge amount of knowledge, networks of their own into your patch from a second and third degree connection. And ultimately, they may have a job vacancy for you. So again, don't be too protected on that. Then, of course, connect with your own peers. And I think that's the bit that everybody kind of gets a bit shy. Oh, I don't know that person. But you like the business, or you might identify with your commonality being HR or whatever the link is. Connect with them. I'm sure they wouldn't mind, and vice versa. And hopefully you'll in turn get some connection invites, because people are thinking the same way, that maybe you work at an employee that's of interest to them. Could be location, it could be personal interest. And I think once you build out that network, suddenly engagement is then really, really good, which will lead to one of the later points that we'll touch upon.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think obviously actually how you go about approaching networking is key. The great thing with platforms like LinkedIn is they make it very easy to connect into individuals. But actually, there is no barrier unless you get one or two profiles where you have to know someone's email address to be able to connect. And I've never got that function particularly, because the person still has the option to decline. So, and if they knew you, it's not really expanding the network anyway. But all you have to do is click a button. And for me, that is it's almost too simple. And therefore, you know, people just go willy-nilly connecting in with anybody and everybody. And I think that to make a true connection on LinkedIn, you're right. You know, yes, there's a stretch about who you connect with, but how do you connect with them? And for a lot of people that don't realize is, you know, when you hit the connect button, there's also a button that pops up onto the screen that says, would you like to add a note? And for me, I put a personalized note to every single individual that I connect with. And generally, it's an explanation of why I want to connect with them, why I think there's value. And you know, for me, it's multiple different things. It's because I think we could add value to their organization. It's because I think that they may need support in looking for their next role. It could be that they've shared a piece of content that I thought was particularly interesting. And, you know, content works from a, you know, impressions basis. So you do end up seeing content from people outside of your network, and I'll drop them a note, basically thanking them for sharing the content, letting them know that I've taken the time to read their content and that I have an interest in reading more of their content, and therefore I'd like to be part of their network. But, you know, for me, to make real connections in LinkedIn, it is actually about taking the ease out of the process and putting a personalized touch into it. And if you do that, A, your acceptance rate will go through the roof, but B, you're actually likely to form stronger relationships or certainly open conversations with individuals. And, you know, I can't tell you the numbers. All I can tell you is my diary is absolutely stacked out every single week via my networking, because of the detail that I put into the personal notes and the understanding of the people that I'm talking to. They come back and they say, John, thanks very much for the message. It's great to have you in the network. I'd love to understand more about what SportsX do. Can we jump on a call so you can tell me more about it? You know, and I'm not pitching to anybody. At no point do I have a sell, but people are proactively going, we want to hear more about what you're doing. You know, so if you dropped a message as a candidate to an individual within an organization that you wanted to work for, you know, well, if you're a marketing candidate, I suggest you try and make connections within the marketing team. Or if you're a HR candidate, I suggest you try and network in with a HR person. But add a note, explain what it is about the organization that you know interests you. Why would you want to go and work for them? And look, they may come back and say they've got something. They may just want to connect. They may invite you to an exploratory conversation. They may not have anything for you, but that HR professional may know of a job within another organization that's similar to the organizations and the reasons that you want to work for it, that she will subsequently recommend you onto. So there's such a power in networking, but the more personal you can make it, the more time and the more considered you can be within your approach to individuals, I think the more powerful it becomes, and it can become, you know, very powerful very quickly if you do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just that personal connection, the hows and the whys is really important. Don't just spam everybody, otherwise you won't get a lot of success through the process. Okay, so here we've done the brand, we touched on the network, and we're building out a really robust network. My recommendation is to try and connect to about 30 people per day.
Yep.
If you've got more time on your hands, then go for more. If you are struggling, maybe you are still working, then just try and get 10 a day. It's manageable. 10 a day at an absolute minimum is manageable. I like to kind of lead quite nicely into sort of the marketing piece from here. And what I mean by marketing on LinkedIn is the content engine, the content drive that you're going to start pushing out to your network. So you've built a really nice brand. You've got a good network now of individuals that you have shared commonalities with, and you're looking to secure a job fundamentally. Your content needs to be something you feel comfortable with. And I think this is the biggest barrier that everybody faces is, I don't want to put myself out there, or I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to share an opinion that upsets somebody, or I don't want to look like I've got an opinion, if that makes sense. And you kind of sit on the fence. And actually you can start really small. It could be if you've recently completed a course, or if you've gone for a walk and you've taken the dog, take a picture, share it, talk about relaxing and de-stressing, prioritizing. You're not saying anything that will offend anybody. You're not saying anything controversial, but you're putting yourself out there. And it does mean that you're giving a little bit of vulnerability away. But I think once you've done that, you'll start seeing the support network of everybody coming around. And then you just grow in confidence, and you start writing things that are a bit more market specific, or perhaps just more detailed content.
Yeah, and look, I mean, this is one that we probably can debate a little bit, because I actually I agree with you to an extent that people need to do things that build their confidence, and the small things that they do of going for a dog walk, taking a picture, doing a video, I think are all good and relevant. My personal opinion is that I wouldn't share them on LinkedIn. I would open an Instagram account and I would practice doing that. No, I would. Yeah, I would. I'd practice doing it on Instagram. I'd film myself on 15-second video clips 3 times a day, just so I get used to speaking to a camera, talking to an audience, get over the stuttering of your words, not knowing what to say. And like, I mean, you'll remember it. When I moved to Dubai nearly 3 years ago, I did a 1 month on Instagram of just, this is my journey of moving to Dubai. This is what things have been like. But it was me breaking into social media, using a platform, trialing. My wife and I both said that we were going to see how we could build our Instagram accounts out, and what type of following we could get. It was a close contest. I've got 414 followers in 3 years, and Yaz has got about 10,500. So one of us is more popular than the other, but a very close contest, as you can tell.
She's far more interesting. We should have had her as the guest speaker.
You should have done. She knows far more about everything than I do anyway. So yeah, so I would work out what platforms there are and how you can use them to practice your skills. And then when you feel confident, I feel that then LinkedIn is a platform that when you share content, I would always have the mindset of this should add value to other individuals within my network. So it can be opinion, but it should be opinion not to just rattle people. It should be opinion to spark debate and conversation. If it's content, there should be a purpose to it. There should be something that people can learn, something that people could be interested in. I always try and tell people on LinkedIn, it's better to pick a strategy and keep your content consistent within that strategy. So if it's a certain industry that you work in and it's an industry you're passionate about, like sports for us, sports and talent, I guess is our two sort of pillars. It's like, try and keep your content all relevant to that. If you're a HR professional and your passion is HR, it's maybe more granular than that, it's learning and development. Well, then I would probably try and produce as much L&D led content as I possibly could, because it's a platform where people often come on to digest. Either news is one thing, so you could share relevant articles that are newsworthy around your industry or around your specialism, or they come on to learn. That's predominantly the two things that people use LinkedIn for from a newsfeed point of view.
Yeah, look, I think actually this is probably the one we will debate a little bit more, because I think LinkedIn's changing. I think LinkedIn is not entirely a professional platform. I think we are seeing an influence of social media in its purest essence. It is starting to feel like a Facebook of the world, where you start seeing people's personalities and profiles and personal achievements. There are individuals praising their children's achievements. Yeah, it might be an academic achievement, but it's still not entirely relevant to adding value.
Yeah.
But it can actually have the best engagement. And I think people can also resonate with that, because they applaud that person because maybe they're going through that process, or they just share someone else's success. And I think that's the purpose of engaging and networking. And I think it'll be interesting because, of course, we're at slightly different markets, but let's fast forward a couple of years and see where LinkedIn is again. And it might be that it goes back to being quite professional, because perhaps everybody's working 1 to 4 and unemployment is at a low. But right now, I think how people are treating it is as a stress reliever. And I think that's why.
Yeah, but I take that point, and I agree with it, actually, because what you're saying is that they are using it as a stress reliever. They're using it as an outlet, which in turn is almost creating a camaraderie within people's networks and a community, and people are engaging on each other's posts and they're giving messages of support. Because I think, again, it comes back to the kind of 99% rule. 99% of people on LinkedIn are all cheering each other's corners because we know how tough things are right now, and we want to be there to support. So, yeah, I don't think you're wrong in that at all. I guess I'm thinking about content from a finding a job perspective, and and probably from a sports perspective, because I know that my clients will go onto people's profiles in LinkedIn and they will look around what is the content they're creating, what is the content that they're sharing, what's the content that they're commenting on, and to a lot of it, it's like, is this person a sports nut? Does this person really understand our industry? Will this person be culturally good for us? And if you don't follow lots of sports pages on LinkedIn, if you're not sharing or commenting or interacting on sports related content, and everything's about the fact you took your dog for a walk, I'm not saying anybody's going to judge you for posting stuff about your dog walk, but what I'm saying is it doesn't give you any competitive edge over everybody else. Whereas where the competitive edge is that you showcase your expertise that's relevant to the job or the industry that you're trying to get into. And that's where the competitive advantage becomes. So HR professional looking for an L&D role, if they produce loads of good content on L&D over 5 other candidates that haven't, and the client goes on there and reads their content, it's far more impactful and it gives them a competitive edge, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we spoke about the CV writing document that I shared with you beforehand. That was somebody within my network from an internal TA function, talent acquisition function, who off their own back decided to produce this bit of content for their network, and they were happy enough to share with me. And that's great. That is where you want to get to.
Yeah.
When you start delivering value add to your own network of that substance, you're sorted. You get the whole concept. I think that the content piece is going to be the hardest part for people. It's the one that is just, it's hard to be imaginative. It's sometimes difficult to articulate the point, so on and so forth. But it's definitely achievable. And there's another guy I'm thinking of in my head at the moment who is just literally sharing every vacancy he sees within HR across the UK. And he's getting 60,000 views at the moment by just simply being that data source. He's not writing too much in terms of commentary. He's not overthinking. He just sees a role and he shares it to the network. And everybody is now following him purely on that basis. And, I think wherever he ends up next from an employment perspective, he's already accomplished employee branding. So his proposition is far stronger than others.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm skeptical on these types of individuals, because what's the motive behind it? I mean, you're sharing something that's already out there in the domain. In my opinion, I think you're doing it just to build your own following because you think there's value in that. Not necessarily. With all the right intentions. In the same way that there are a lot of people with these generic posts that they are rewriting to make out like it was their own experience because they know they'll get 800 comments on it. And, that's happening not just on LinkedIn, it's happening across all social media platforms with, the fitness industry is rife with it at the moment, with people doing posts of themselves looking super hot, going Instagram, and then posts of them with what's meant to be reality where they're showing cellulite, but actually they're both filtered. They don't have those levels of cellulite. They're putting themselves into uncomfortable positions to try and show body fat when actually these guys and girls don't have any anyway. And they're not doing it to make people feel better about themselves. They're doing it to drive engagement for their own personal gain. So yeah, I get it, and I do understand why people are doing it. Maybe I'm just becoming a little bit cynical in my old age, and we won't say how old I am on this podcast. But look, it's like I think there's a balance. I do think there's a balance in between content for content's sake and versus content for just for good sort of quality networking. My advice, and look, I mean, if anybody wants advice, this is what I always say to them. It's like, yes, it is very difficult to write your own content. It's daunting. You're exposing yourself. You open yourself up to criticism, especially when you're providing opinion. A lot of people don't feel like they want to be attacked. I would start small, a bit like you were saying, but I think what I would try and do on a weekly basis is share 3 to 5 pieces of content. So share articles that you think are relevant to your network with a header to them with a piece of opinion or thought around the article. And I think that's a good way of people sort of testing the water and starting to engage, and then getting used to having people comment on the content that they're producing. And then obviously the second thing is, if people are commenting on it, it's really important that you respond to their comment, acknowledge that they've taken the time to do so, because again, that's building relationships, that's networking, it's exposure. And then hopefully off of the back of that, they'll then start to build some confidence to then go, right, I'm actually going to try and write my own piece. And the first thing they should do is just try and write something short form, my top 5 tips on, and then, because not everything has to be war and peace. And then, over time, maybe build it out and add a little bit more to it each time.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. Probably a nice way to round that piece off. I probably only want to touch on a couple of extra bits that I would add around sort of notifications. It sounds silly, but you can set up job alerts on LinkedIn. You can set up notifications on people engaging, interacting on your posts. Just like you said, John, you don't want to miss those opportunities where somebody's given up their time to share their thoughts and opinions with your piece of sort of engagement content. So make sure that alert is set up, it's readily available, and then you can respond to it really quickly, whether it's on your mobile phone or you're signing in on the laptop, on your work desktop, whatever it may be. And then I think once you build in all of these mechanics, you will start seeing inbound leads. And I think, to me, inbound leads are more active recruiters reaching out and headhunting and offering you job opportunities, because they've noticed your profile more based on content, on network, on marketing, whatever it may be. And then also you'll start seeing direct employees reaching out, and you'll see commonalities, hopefully hiring managers, and then your own peer group. I think that at the moment, that's what we're probably seeing quite a lot of, your own peer group. You talk about that community earlier. That's a perfect example at the moment, is they're all sharing with each other.
Yeah, I agree totally. Yeah, I mean, the beauty of the platform is that there is so much functionality to it. There is so much potential in terms of exposing your profile to opportunities, globally, opportunities. Yes, we know we're in the middle of a really tough time, but you and I are probably people that are on the platform a hell of a lot more than just the normal everyday individual that sporadically comes on to check. And I think what we can both probably confirm right now is that there are new live jobs coming on every single day. There's good quality jobs with good employers, and it's just a very competitive space right now. And therefore, for me, doing everything that you can, consistently on the platform will give you the greatest shot of getting, past the gatekeeper and into a situation where you're actually getting forwards to an interview where you can really, have that human to human interaction. But you're right. It's so competitive at the moment. You start missing out on notifications. You start getting sloppy with, I'm not going to log in. I'm not going to check my messages for 5 days. It's the modern world. It's the digital world. People aren't waiting for 5 days to a response for messages. You need to be getting back to people straight away. And it's kind of like, I kind of think there's no half in on this. You're either all in or don't worry about using the platform, because, it's so powerful, but it's only so powerful if you want to utilize it to its fullest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we've gone on nearly an hour already, so I'm sure if our listeners are still with us,
if anyone's still awake, then yeah.
But I think there's so many extra layers that you could still go into, where we could talk about Recruiter and how we access and see profiles, and also just how you engage when people accept messages, and sometimes you get the message accept and nothing else, and you're kind of going, okay, let me give it another prod, and it's kind of just adding that fluidity to a process. But that's because a lot of LinkedIn users don't get to see the Recruiter tab and the options and how the recruitment piece perhaps works, whether it's agency or in-house functions. But we'll say that for another day, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We can always do a part 2 on this if the audience demands it, if anybody listens to it or stays awake for the entirety. So Well, I mean, this has been awesome. I really hope that it's provided some value to people when they listen to it. And I'm sure you'll echo this, but I'm always open to engaging with individuals in the sports community. And if anybody needs some more detail and clarity around what we've spoken about, just feel free to reach out to one of us, and we'll be more than happy to give some insights.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'd really, really like just one or two extra opinions from people in the market, whether it's another recruiter thinking otherwise, because I think until we get consistent with the message we're delivering, it's a bit like CVs, only then will we start adding value to the market. And, we're definitely we're closer to each other's pages, but we're not quite there yet, right?
Yeah.
We still have different strategies, and that's okay, probably based on market conditions. But yeah, I'll be intrigued to see what everybody else thinks as well. Cool. Well, look, John, thank you so much for your time again.
Yeah, no, great, mate. It was always good to catch up.